No. Hope she's having good at work. Deputy Clerk, sir, are we? Thank you, sir. I didn't get a Does somebody need a packet?
I got one. I got it.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Binghamton City Council business meeting, 6 p.m. Wednesday, 4 October. Council chambers, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rezinetti.
Present.
Councilwoman Riley.
President.
Councilmember Friedman is absent. Councilman Burns.
Present.
Councilman Strawn.
Present.
Councilman Scanlon.
Present.
And President Scringy.
Present.
That's 6 here, 1 absent. Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. A quorum is present. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Rezinetti for the purposes of a motion.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for the approval of minutes from the September 20th, 2023 business meeting.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilwoman Rezinetti, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Thank you, Councilwoman. At this point, we'll recognize Madam Clerk for the purposes of a public hearing notice.
Binghamton City Council and the Mayor of the City of Binghamton will hold a public hearing regarding RL 23-196 entitled Amending the Bond Ordinance adopted in November 19th, 2021 relating to the construction of various improvements to Marabito Stadium to comply with the mandates of the Major League Baseball.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we will move forward with a public hearing. Madam Clerk, was there anything submitted electronically in relation to communication? I'm sorry? Yes.
No, there was not.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Councilwoman. Seeing none, if anyone is wishing to speak in person in relation to the public hearing, you have 5 minutes. Please communicate forward your name and whether you work or live in the city of Binghamton. And again, by public hearing, just be mindful that anything spoken during this time is in relation to the content of the public hearing, RL 23-196, entitled Amending the Bond Ordinance adopted 19 November 2021 relating to construction of various improvements to Marabito Stadium to comply with the mandates of Major League Baseball. Is there anyone that would like to come forward? Mr. Abdelazim? You can, this is your time to speak in whatever way you'd like, sir, regarding the public hearing. Evening, sir. How are you? Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Whenever you're ready, sir, the floor is yours. Never would, sir. Mr. Abdelazim, forgive my apologies. I'll reset your
That way?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sometimes these microphones are a little finicky. I apologize. Can we please reset the clock for Mr. Abdelazim, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Did you say this was already adopted?
No, I said public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I want to go on the record in opposition to this resolution. We are the owner and landlord of this stadium. So we have a responsibility to the quality and the performance of this facility. However, I believe that we have a lack of effective and responsible management of improvements that have been made over the years. I believe that there has been misperception about this massive increase and whether we're mandated or not. I believe that some of the language has been straight up dishonest. And I believe that we need to pause and get someone to audit what the hell is going on over at this stadium. Over the last 7 years, we've spent 14.25 million in taxpayer dollars, almost 10 million from the city alone if this bill is passed. 10 million from the city alone. In 2016, there was 2 million granted from the New York State taxpayers. They said they were fixing improving the clubhouses, the performance stage, the playground area, skybox facilities, amenity stations, kiosk, 144 person picnic deck, adding a lot of concrete over to an area that probably could exacerbate future flooding issues. In 2018, improvements were announced. Again, 2.5 million pulled from the city general fund in 48 hours with support from members of this council at the behest of Mayor David. And that included structural critical system upgrades, waterproofing measures, new sod and drainage systems, new video boards, new sound system, home clubhouse netting. Then in 2021, we had 2.75 million to meet new facility standards. That's fair. It's absolutely fair. But there was conversation here last time about, Joe, you asked what happened to the video board. The mayor said it was dysfunctional from like day one. Well, why the hell don't we get a warranty? Why are the taxpayers on the hook for another board that didn't work from day one? Who is responsible for fiscal management of this project? And as a Republican majority council who provides fiscal oversight for the city taxpayers, you have done an abysmal job. Who's running the show over there? Do you know what work has been done with $10 million? The lease agreement that was signed in 2021. Have y'all seen a copy? It's very clear. How much, up to what amount, Brian, are we responsible for to meet facility standards? It's $3.1 million, up to $3.1 million to meet PDL improvement standards. That's correct. The other language is very vague. It's we also have to fix drainage issues. That can cost 20,000 to 20 million. Whoever wrote this agreement was completely irresponsible. And I'm telling you right now, you need to open up this agreement before you make a significant increase in investment and change this language so we are not on the hook. Are you okay, Strawn? Are you with me? Or are you still napping? You okay? All right. I could clap if I need you to wake up, if you want me to. Okay, just checking. Just checking. So look at the language. It is up to 3.1 million. There's also a requirement that the owner is supposed to spend how much money? Do you know? 500,000, isn't that right? 350,000 in capital improvements over 3 years by opening day 2025, 2022, 2023. How far have they gone? What have they made? Have they started to meet that standards? The lease agreement names Ewan Cole, a design firm that has experience with stadium upgrades. I believe did the Met Stadium down in Port Lucie, Florida.
You have 1 minute.
They were hired to assess the improvements needed and confirm completion. I would ask for any correspondence from Ewan Cole. So what you're being asked to do is increase this amount 4.15 to deal with drainage issues. And believe it or not, some people in this community still pick up the phone when I call, talking with engineers and people who have worked at that facility. It wasn't necessarily the improvements that were made in the teens, which means the improvements that we funded in 2016 and 2018. There are some other issues that are seriously a problem here. And if it involves underground drainage issues that is clogged from the excessive use of Speedy Dry and Turf Dry, this project is going to balloon. There is no way it's going to be done by opening day if you do it right. So you're chasing a ghost and you're spending millions of dollars on something you have no idea what we're responsible for. You have to reject this and put forward a responsible plan
Your 5
because
minutes
we
is
are
up.
landlords and I do believe we need to meet our requirements, but this is the worst way to do it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in relation to the public hearing? Evening, sir. How are you?
Not bad. About yourself?
Good. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Kenneth Brown. I'm a resident of the city.
Thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
I came to talk about, just comment on the extra funding for the stadium. I saw the numbers for the last, I think it was 9 years for how much we put in, and I'm gonna read what I wrote just because if I don't, I'm just gonna tangent. Just so we're clear on the numbers, this is $9,750,000 from the city taxpayers since 2014. Just the city taxpayers, not the New York State taxpayers. So I didn't even take the time to do the math on how much we would be getting taken from that. The population of Binghamton in 2021 was recorded as 47,566. If we were to break that down per citizen, it's $204.97 per citizen. The average ticket at a Rumble Ponies game is what, 13 to 14 for the middle seats. You know, if you want to get the cheap seats, they're $8. But we'll say $14 for an average. At 14 a ticket, if every Binghamton citizen got a 50% return on investment, they should be getting at least $7 or 7 comp tickets per season. But what I've seen, I remember, I think it was earlier in the summer, Jared Cram made a post about Binghamton night at the stadium, how, you know, first responders were getting tickets. That's great. That's fantastic. But if the taxpayers are going to be stuck with the bill for this, it seems like some kind of return on investment instead of a sinking party patio, I don't know, some seats that look a little bit shinier would be better for the taxpayer if we're going to drop this kind of money, which I know we are, because I mean, if anything, the last time I was here, it's pretty clear you guys just listen and do what you want. But I mean, just think about the fact that $4.5 million, $4.5 million, the kinds of things that could be done with that, which, don't get me wrong, the stadium is an important thing. It brings in people to buy a few things here and there. But when you talk about return on investment, it just doesn't seem like the average taxpayer is getting it. And once again, the average taxpayer is getting stuck with the bill. I mean, it just over and over and over and over again, we see this, and it just seems like, when is going to be the end? And it doesn't seem like it's going to happen unless, you know, a miracle happens and the majority changes in November. And I'm not even a Democrat. I just want some kind of checks and balances. Just consider this, please, when you're voting. Actually consider it. Don't smile, don't nod. Just do your job.
Thank you, sir, very much. Evening, Mr. Solak. How are you?
Fine, thank
Good to
you.
see you.
Well, it's nice to be seen at this point.
Floor is
many-
yours.
How many times, I'm speaking of, I'm in opposition of this. Now, you'll approve it because invariably what happens at any public hearing, no matter how many people speak against it, the representative government vote goes against the people they represent. So you're going to vote for this. How many times has baseball been saved? These people run for re-election. This contract guarantees baseball for 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25. We got it. We saved it. No mention of further payments. When this stadium came to pass in the early 90s, people thought of it that it was going to be a community stadium. They thought high school football was going to be there. They thought concerts were going to be there. They thought anything and everything was going to be there at the stadium. Not an exclusive contract with one tenant. One tenant. When a team is sold, and this has been flipped a number of times, guys living down in South Carolina, large with palatial, gated community. He's living large down there. How much did the city get out of that capital gain the first time? It's a public-private partnership, right? Team is flipped again. How much did the city get? Anybody said, geez, I feel bad. It's, you know, baseball's been very good to me. Here's $500,000. Nothing. In fact, many times the city didn't even know that the team was up for sale. You had to get a baseball publication. So you got the contract. Who else uses the stadium? Nobody. Nobody. Baseball's been saved at what cost? It's not a community stadium. How much, do you know how much this guy paid for the team? You see, when we got into this, and Gordon Wackett used to come to these meetings with a big attaché case, he used to have all the contracts, all the paperwork. Now you got a computer, but you still can't pull it up. But the way we got into this is Juanita Crabb, God bless her, hired a very inexperienced corporation counsel. And he did the hotel and he did this agreement, and it was bad legal work from the beginning. The tradition of this city is nobody ever learns from anything. There's never any postmortem. They don't say, well, let's not make the same mistake. Well, you know, we were led to believe by Mayor David that these improvements, this last round of improvements was the end of it. You know, who are these leagues? Do you have any direct correspondence with these leagues? You just take the team owner's word. I mean, how much paperwork have you got from the league? If I do a FOIL, how much? You know, this is a never ending sinkhole. It is a sinkhole. Now, as far as baseball being popular, you know, you mean the fireworks show with the baseball game in between? Is that, I mean, this is a joke. You know how many stadiums you could have built? Really modest stadiums for this amount. At some point, if you really want baseball, at some point, the 10 million, put the 10 million towards a brand new stadium and level this thing. You know, if that's what you want to do. By the way, the stadium was never supposed to be there. That's an industrial plot. Jack Cheevers, the late Town of Union supervisor, told me a long time ago, he says, a stadium there is absolutely insane. That's one of your last industrial sites. You know, that's what you got railroad tracks for. So this thing is a joke. It's a rat hole. It's irresponsible. And this is why people hate politicians and they hate local government.
You have 1 minute.
Because all you do is tax, spend, and borrow. Tax, spend, and borrow. So this is an absurd thing. Nothing is ever clear. There's nothing to stop them to say, you know, we need this, we need that. You don't have adequate paperwork. Let me ask you this. Is this an exclusive contract? Can I mean, you know, as bad as the arena and forum are, you can rent it. You know, anybody could rent those places with an open date. Where do I go to rent a stadium? I want to rent a stadium right now for one night. Is it available? Can you find out for me? I'll have the John Solak show. I'll pay whatever it is. I'll be down there. I want to rent the stadium. It's our stadium. And I bet you my rent would be more than a baseball team. And by the way, these players
time
don't
is
get
up.
squat. Minor league players don't get squat. You know, the hockey team, one of the hockey teams here, the Rangers, this is the last point. They paid their players here $175,000 a year. These minor league baseball players don't get nothing. They get what? They get a couple $100 and a bus ride and a bus ride and a bus ride and a bus ride.
Thank you, Mr. Solak. Everybody, anyone else that wishes to speak in relation to the public hearing? Seeing none, and there were no electronic requests for communication, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. And you're the chair, the ayes have it. At this time, we will move on to public comment. Residents wishing to submit comments I was going to do it afterward, but let me hit that first. Chair recognizes Madam Clerk for the purposes of setting public hearing. Madam Clerk.
We're setting two public hearings. The first one is regarding the proposed 2024 City of Binghamton budget as amended. And the second one is regarding RL 23-218, the bond ordinance for the Water Street parking garage. Both of these public hearings will take place at the October 18th, 2023 business meeting. Residents wishing to participate in the public hearing may do so electronically by emailing their comments prior to 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting to clerk@cityofbinghamton.gov or in person during the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we'll move forward with public comment. Residents wishing to submit public comment may do so electronically by emailing their comments prior to 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting to clerk@cityofbinghamton.gov or in person during the meeting. Madam Clerk, were there any electronic submissions that were provided for communication for public comment?
No, there was not.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Those wishing to speak in person have 5 minutes. Please identify yourself with your name and whether you work or reside in the city of Binghamton. Evening, Mr. Abdelzim.
Good evening, Tarek
Floor is yours, sir.
Abdelazam. I reside in Binghamton. I just want to say the clerk, you've been so responsive to my foils, so thank you. I really do appreciate that. If anyone wants a copy of the lease, I'm happy to share it with you. As we talk about, something I missed that nobody's minding the store, this council approved mayor's proposal in 2022 to hire Peter Popovic, who lives in Cleveland, Akron area, to provide project management services to the phase 2 improvements. And we wonder why we're losing money and we're not getting the improvements we're paying for. Also, they said that he couldn't even, I think the owner said he couldn't even push the water into the sewer, right? So just so you know, you use 600,000 of ARPA funds to pay for the design of the Henry Street reconstruction. And you defined it as because there's going to be a lot of stormwater infrastructure. It's fine. The Congress changed the rules. You could use it for surface road projects. But in McFarland Johnson's scope, which was approved, that quote, we assume that the main storm sewer trunk line will not need replacement. Peak flow attenuation to address surcharging issues will be accomplished through a reduction in impervious services and green infrastructure practices. And we're adding 70 units at the Stadium Lofts project. Like, there is no coordination. This is a drainage issue. We learned it at Rec Park tennis courts. We're learning it at Conlin Field. This is all over the city. Communities are dealing with this. I'm telling you, you're throwing money down the drain, whether it's clogged with speedy dry or not. You need to provide more oversight and just pause. I'd also say is that speaking about throwing money down the drain, the Water Street parking garage. People say I misrepresent information. I always link to online documents. I cite the sources. At the June 1st, 2023 Water Street Development Corporation Board meeting, Chuck Shager acknowledged the first floor will be reserved for retail users. 60 spots for Boscov's users. 60 spots. The other floors you enter through a different way, you use a different kiosks, and those are monthly parkers on the upper floors and the tenants of the 122 planned unit. So why are we still moving forward with a $27 million parking facility with a dim hope that somewhere down the line, a developer will come in and want to now build 120 housing units? This is absurd. This is a ridiculous waste of money. 27 million, 7 million of which was pandemic recovery funds. 7 million of pandemic recovery funds, and people are complaining about the growing number of those who are unhoused in this community. We found 100+ spots by painting on the streets after the downtown parking study. And it looks great. I love the one-way in front of Boscov's. We added 100+ spots for like $12,000. If Boscov's was so happy with 60 spots, then let's just go with the surface parking lot, make it absolutely beautiful. Let's add some more spots downtown. And then if someone comes along and wants to do housing, then we can move forward with this project. But to think that we're going to spend, and this is going to increase 10%, 20%. This is like a little boy with mommy's credit card who just can't stop charging. And you all need to do a little more research because the city's own reports that are prepared by Chuck Shager
You
are
have 1
sent
minute.
every year to the New York State Comptroller's Office. I've been tracking this since 2006. I can give you the worksheet if you want. When we talk about our fiscal health, you look at the discretionary funds you have in your fund balance, unassigned, unreserved. In case something calamitous happens, you have funds to help. In 2019, at the end of the year, there was $12.126 million. At the end of 2022, there's 3.4 million. That has decreased 73% since Graham's taken office. If you think I'm making these numbers up, I will send you the report. And Chuck is going to say he's not wrong. There's 10 million. 7 million is the ARPA funds that have been pushed over to the capital fund. That is reserved, unassigned, unreserved. You are driving this city off the cliff. I've seen it before. I walked into this city hall after years of the same shit. And I'm telling you right now, the taxpayers are going to hurt.
Your 5 minutes.
You're
is up.
setting them up for a lot of pain.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment? Evening, Mr. Solak.
Good evening.
How are
My
you, sir?
camera is for my protection. You got your camera, I got my camera.
You're allowed to. It's called the
Yeah.
First Amendment.
Okay.
Floor is
Uh,
yours, sir.
Yeah. How much do you pay for your garbage cans at home? If you check garbage can prices lately, Home Depot, Lowe's,
Gone up.
would any of you buy an $800 trash can? Are you in favor? Let me ask you this. Are you in favor of the expenditure of $800 for a single trash can? Worse yet, buy local. Are you in favor of purchasing those trash cans all the way from California? I've done about 30 seconds of due diligence. I've found trash cans for a lot less than $800. Why can't you? Why can't you? Are you in favor of $800 trash cans? That's what we need to know. We need to know that. And what is so great about an $800 trash can? You know, any gizmo that you buy, the salesman at Best Buy or wherever, they'll tell you, well, the reason you buy this faucet versus that faucet is because of this and that. What exactly is so great about these trash cans that they cost $800? Aren't you ashamed of this? Would you classify an $800 trash can as waste, fraud, and abuse? Would that fit it? Or is that just me being unkind? Me being judgmental? Me being me? $800 a piece for a garbage can. Now, let's look at the city. Go up to the Masonic Temple. You know, the lot was made. They're going to clean up you see that the fence has been moved and you see garbage and garbage and garbage and garbage. That's all you see. Now, there's a lot of nonprofits here, a lot of foundations here. I bet you that they would contribute to trash cans. And in Idaho's a very clean place, Bob. They have a service where people come to your home and clean out your trash, you know, like trash cans, like Taylor garbage cans, right? So younger people come and spray the can and things. I mean, we've got all these unemployed people here. You know, it's not like this is full employment. It began with the garbage bags. It began with a silly, cynical attempt to raise about $800,000 in revenue. I don't know what it raises now. Jam-packed the full cans, the bags, and the bags are all over hell. You know, and the squirrels break in. There was no garbage problem in this city until the garbage bags. But now we have to have these $800 garbage cans. It's a simple matter of getting chains, locking these cans down. If they're metal, they're plastic, and empty every day. Now, why just downtown? Why just downtown? How about naming rights to the garbage cans? You know, how about that? Do you think that Jared Cram has any wisdom at all? You got a deputy mayor, another deputy mayor. I don't know.
You have
when
1 minute.
the deputy mayor takes their oath of office. I don't know, for that position. Does anybody say, you know, Jared, $800 is a lot of money for a garbage can. You know, this could come back to haunt you. Could be dump Cram in a can, an $800 can. This shows the complete and utter insanity of this city. So we can talk 10 million, and we did talk 10 million, and we talked 20, 30, 40 million for the Water Street development. Oh, by the way, congratulations to Mayor David. He's executing his bar room a lot quicker than he executed any other project. You see, when somebody's own money is on the line, boy, let's get this thing done. Let's get it done. So this is a city of folly. Where's the passion? Where's the zeal? Where's the outrage? Where is it? This isn't politics. This is just inertia. This is low energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment, please? Evening, sir. Thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, so since
Floor
the
is
Rec
yours.
Park tennis courts were brought up, I think I'll bring it back up too. Glad to see they're finally done after years and years of disaster. But as we heard, and we know, and you all know, because you've been part of it, the mistakes and hiccups that made the initial cost go from 600,000 to 1.9 million. And that was before even the last necessary fix, which we don't know how much it is, because even though the mayor said we would not be stuck with, the taxpayers would not be stuck with the cost, I haven't seen any public release of any type of comment, any numbers to prove otherwise. I mean, I foiled for the initial contracts. I don't know if I can foil. Can the clerk answer a question? Is that
The 5 minutes is yours, sir.
Okay.
If you would like, if you'd like to, and I'll add on an extra 30 seconds for you. So if you'd like to direct
it's
this
just a yes?
question.
Yeah, it's just a yes or no question.
Yeah, so if you want to ask me the question, I'll
Okay.
follow up with an
Is
answer with you
the-
directly.
I just want to know if I can foil for any type of information contract paperwork that would show me that the taxpayer wasn't stuck with the bill.
In relation to the tennis courts?
The final fix that was said that we would get. So at this last fix, the numbers weren't put out. Mayor Cram said we would not be stuck with the bill, that the company in charge of it would cover the costs, and otherwise he would take that company to court to cover the cost. I want to know if there's a way I can foil to get the information if that is available.
If you can provide me with your email address or phone number, I'll follow up with you after the meeting as
Okay.
quickly as I can.
Well, if I-
But again, just this is the first time I've seen you here, which is completely fine. So
that's- I
just
just
so you
wanted to know.
understand from a procedural perspective, this is the public's time to speak. It's not generally held as a discussion, but
Okay.
can you put 30 seconds additional on this time? Go ahead, sir. The floor
All right,
is
and
yours
then-
for the remainder.
If I can get that foil, that'd be great. I hope that's possible, just because we were told that we wouldn't be stuck with it. But I mean, we haven't seen anything. Transparency under this administration, the last administration has been, pretty terrible. And I mean, I would like to know if we got stuck with it, especially since the person who's the CFO for the company is sitting here at the table. And that leads me to my next point, which I don't know if any of you check your social media pages. I'm pretty annoying. I've commented on many a thing of yours. And one of the questions I did ask was, if you, as an elected official, would support a law in the city of Binghamton that would ban city project contracts going to companies with hard financial ties to sitting city elected officials. Because that seems like a reasonable, nonpartisan issue in the sense of anti-cronyism and potential corruption. Now, I'm not saying anything illegal or corrupt happened with this project, but if, you know, we passed a law that banned these kinds of things, that question wouldn't even be possible. So that's what I want to ask you and have you seriously consider, because I won't let it go. I'm pretty annoying. I don't know if you've watched the news. I stood in front of Beer Tree all last week yelling at them because they were stealing tips from their servers. And I just want you guys to think about that and honestly consider that, because if you do get it reelected, I will be back. I will make sure that's clear to the public. I've tried my best. I'm going to do my best to get WBNG to cover it, because as well, they're not the best at, you know, basic journalistic integrity, but hopefully we can make them do that. All right, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Once again, do your job.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment? Thank you very much to all those who spoke. Seeing none and no electronic communications were received. We'll move forward at this time with second read legislation. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-120.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-120. In order to allocate American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds to support an affordable housing project at 187 Clinton Street with acquisition costs and pre-development activities, including environmental testing and engineering services.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Council discussion. Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. I do want to get on the record because I did mention that I had not received some data from Sarah Glows. And for those of you that don't know, we have these two different folders, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. It was forwarded to me, and we now know where the data came from for the report regarding the housing needs survey. Again, this project does speak to the median level income earners, and it does address the lower AMI percentages as well. But as I stated before, we have a greater need in the lower subset, the lower percentages in terms of housing needs. So I did want to make sure I addressed both here during this meeting. So the literature that we share back and forth does show, again, the need is present, but you can also tell by the numbers that the 50% AMI and lower are greater. So I just wanted to add that comment and also respond that I did speak to the one council member regarding the partnerships, as was also shared in our email, and that was beneficial. So I encourage others around the table to also reach out to those listed in our email. I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but I would encourage others to reach out to our colleagues that have some experience with the property managers and the funding agencies that are working in conjunction for this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Riley. Is there any other discussion? Councilman Burns.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. In regards to the ARPA money that's being used, we have spent ARPA money on things that, well, for instance, the lost revenue when
our comptroller could only come up with 5 million lost revenue, and then we hired another company to come up with an equation, and it went to 12 or 13 million. And I know that a couple of us voted against that, but I think that this is because of the fact that we need the housing, and there will be the 1-bedroom apartments will be $800 a month, which is very good. It'll be very good for the ward. It'll be very good for Clinton Street, but it'll be very good housing, brand new apartments for $800 a month. Is really great. So even though it's a gamble on the ARPA money, because just like the mayor was talking the other night about the housing that was going to go up over the garage, that the interest rates, they couldn't come up with another contract with them because of the interest rates. And this builder knows what the interest rates are now, and they might go up slightly more, I'm told. I follow CNBC quite a bit, but it'll be very slow coming down. But they know the score, and we're risking that we're going to spend this $2 million up front that they could walk, but then we will own all the information for the next. If we can get somebody else, but I think it's a good gamble because of the housing need. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Burns. Or any other discussion? In my capacity as the representative for the first district, I just want to add in coordination and moving forward with the Clinton Street rebirthing plan. There's definitely been a lot that has gone into this. I know I've spoken with constituents and residents and small businesses. We've had neighborhood meetings throughout the district. Neighborhood Watch, actually Sarah Gloss, even from Economic Development, came down on behalf of the mayor's office and got to speak to residents talking about various impact factors, not just in relation to this project, but in others. And so I'm incredibly excited for this, not just for the ward and for Clinton Street, but its real focus on a rent range that is targeting middle-class working people. It's the history of the ward, it's the tradition of the ward, and we all know that every community that has a robust middle class is incredibly important. So I'm excited for all of the work that has gone into this, and I'm excited to support it. Or any other discussion? Councilwoman Rossetti.
President, I just want to pretty much add on to what you said. I've heard positive feedback regarding this project. It is really exciting. It is going to an area that I think can potentially, well, this project can potentially, I believe it will help revitalize that area and kind of help in bringing Clinton Street in many ways in the way that it was. But outside of that, also the opportunity to have the type of housing that so many of our folks here in our community need. So I am also very excited and will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rossetti. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, is the question called? Question has been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rossetti. Councilwoman Riley.
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman is absent. Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon.
Aye.
President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory ordinance 23-120 passes. In respondents to introductory ordinance 23-124, I just want to publicly put on the record that the State Environmental Quality Review Act concerning introductory ordinance 23-124 did pass unanimously at Wednesday City Council's business meeting, 20 October 2023. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Rossetti for the purposes of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask for unanimous consideration for introductory ordinance 23-124, an ordinance to authorize the sale of 92 Park Avenue to Erica Farber.
Do I have a second? Motioned by Councilwoman Rossetti, seconded by Councilman Strawn. My apologies before I engage discussion. Let me repeat what I said correctly this time, incorrectly last time. the State Environmental Quality Review Act associated with introductory ordinance 23-24 passed at the most previous Binghamton City Council business meeting 20 September 2023 unanimously. My apologies. Council discussion. Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so we had a big discussion, as you all know, the other night about this property. And I did some due diligence on it. I took a real estate expert who I'm related to over there. He is an expert in that he's had his own TV show on for 30 years or something, and et cetera. But his feeling was that if you put it on the MLS, you might get another $20,000 for it, but you'd then have to pay the realtor fees, et cetera. And you don't know how fast it would go. The person that put an offer on it, then they would have to go get a mortgage, and it could be a long period of time before it would close. And is it worth the extra money to do that when we have somebody that's going to pay cash for it? Then we were concerned about when it went for sale and we were looking for a buyer, that I was under the impression that we had requirements of the buyer. And did everybody in the city have an opportunity to put in an offer? Was it a fair way of advertising it? And that it wasn't just sort of an insider trading type thing. So I did remember that there was a open house. So I texted the mayor this morning. He called me back, and he sent me his press release of that day. It was about a year ago, and there was 2 open houses. And then I Googled it and came up with a WNBF, not WNBF, but BNG. They did a story on it. And in the story, they said it's going to be 2 open houses, public is welcome, and that there was no requirements. It said preference will be given to applicants who meet the following criteria: a veteran, Binghamton City School District employee, City of Binghamton employee, City of Binghamton first-time home buyer certified, or New York State AHC statewide and area low moderate income qualified. So we had the 2 open houses. We got 2 offers. Ms. Farber being one of them, and that is the highest offer. She does check 2 of the boxes. She's a veteran. She's a City of Binghamton employee. She did this in an honest way. She signed the contract with the city, and I don't see anything wrong with the way that it went through. And I was talking to the owner of the park bench this afternoon. I took Hadessa Medovetsky, who's running for my seat. I took her over there to look at it, and we went in there, and she was telling us that there were squatters there in recent months, that we did. They're not there anymore. But if we're going into the winter, if we postpone this, then we're more problems. It's going to cost the city more money, the more upkeep. So I think that Ms. Farber, and also on a personal level, I think it's great that we have she's a Binghamton police officer, and we're always talking about. I think last year it concerned me that it was when Mayor David was here, and we had a new contract where you didn't have to live, the police, nobody had to live in the city of Binghamton. And I was concerned about that because they're not really part of the community then, are they? If they're living outside of the city and they're only coming in to do their job and then they leave, they're not they're not part of our community. Their kids aren't going to our schools. They're not, when I was a kid, all the cops, most of the cops lived in the city and you knew who they were and you knew that, you know, it was my friends' fathers, et cetera. But here we have a Binghamton police officer who wants to invest into one of our neighborhoods. I think that's fabulous. So anyway, I'll vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Burns. Is there any further, Councilwoman Riley?
Thank you, Council President. So again, I think I was also, I have been one of the most vocal about my opposition to selling to this person for that bid, because I know the value of property in the neighborhood. And as you know, in the 3rd district, we have a lot of landlords who are always inboxing about different things, trying to make sure they're doing their due diligence as respectable landlords in the 3rd district. I was fortunate enough to also take a tour with a prestigious real estate person. I'm not saying any gender because I don't want anyone to assume that this tour was at the same time as another tour. But it was valuable to hear the insight from someone who does it on a daily basis. And first, I want to commend the team, oh gosh, I'm gonna mess up, Dr. Burling, Dr. Julia Burling, who has taken this task for, I think, 2 years now. And she, from the onset, said that this was going to be a difficult property because of how it was zoned and what it was used for previously. And those of us that drove by it saw that it was in deplorable condition. It was horrendous. But if you walk by it now, it looks good. And it is encouraging from what I assessed when I asked the neighbor who said he was rehabbing that house next door. It's encouraging rehab of the other properties that are in close proximity, which is what we like to hear. I, again, will always prioritize the lower to middle income residents because I know how hard it is to thrive in an environment. And we talk about the students moving from district to district, but that's based upon housing availability and housing affordability. So we must always consider that, particularly when we look at tax rates and how schools are seeing decreases over time. It's because the families don't have a place to live. With this property particularly, I talked to the real estate agent who said that in its current condition, again, if we were to list it as an as-is property, we could generate additional revenue and then put the $55,000 back into our coffers. However, we've spent more than 55 trying to get it to this point. And I don't believe that is the issue at this point. I do believe that it was well marketed. I do believe some of us even posted both open houses on our personal sites and shared it with our networks. As Dr. Burling mentioned, she remembered we went on the tour to the one on the west side. And so I think, though, that when the average first-time home buyer looks at a contract and they say priority will be given to, if you don't meet those qualifications, you automatically back because buying a home for the first time, all of us can remember, is scary, especially when we're going to put your first name, last name, all the places you've owned property and where you work in the public record and blast it and talk about it for weeks on weeks on weeks. I wouldn't want you guys to deliberate over anything I have. I even, so I can see why other potentially eligible residents may not have applied. based upon the language in the documents, based upon the number of people that get a newspaper or even watch the news for things like that. But that's neither here nor there. Today, we have a buyer that is willing to move forward. And I heard she corresponded with our council president. We'll hear more later. And it is unfair to lump her into a category just because of what we see on paper, regardless of what we see on paper. What I think about now, after seeing the house, seeing the work, and listening to Dr. Burling and how exasperated, I mean, she is exhausted. And if we think about how we also advocate for the employees in City Hall and how much more time it would add to the other tasks that she has on her plate, what we would reap in additional revenue would not equal how much she's spending in extra services to continue to push or sell this house. So for Dr. Burling and her team, and let me stop. I also want to commend our council president, because I said, let's reimagine, let's push every button, pull every lever to see what is possible. And although the call did not occur, we have written correspondence that we all have a copy of and can interpret as we see fit, as we desire. And we have the opportunity to call, again, I'm horrible with names, call the young lady back. So we did do our due diligence, however late it was. And the land bank is unable to assist for those that are in the audience that did not know what that email stated. So all of our questions were comprised in one email, and she responded today. I'm not sure around what time, but she did say that this is something she'd seen before the city even acquired the property, or maybe at the same time. And they said no. So we probably should have said no too. But, and I think Dr. Burling also said we should have said no, but we learned. So now we have to pay the cost for this expense. And although like some of the council members said around the table, let's just get it done and move on and do better. And if that's what we're going to do, and then we prioritize again where we see the greatest deficit, then, and again, it's a recommendation. It's not a requirement, as Councilman Burns stated. And as Dr. Burling stated, the main goals of the grant. But I said all of this to say that I am thinking differently about this property and how we move forward. Again, I won't be on council next year, but I hope that those that sit in this seat then prioritize or hear what we've been talking about in terms of the greatest, those with the greatest needs, and then we'll prioritize such as we move forward to acquire additional properties in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roth. Is there any further discussion? Councilwoman Rosenberg.
Thank you. Just a quick comment. We've had a lot of discussion over this and some delays. And I just want to say thank you to the buyer, Erica Carver, who I'm sure at times, because of these delays, maybe felt like she was under unfair scrutiny, as Dr. Burling, Juliet Burling mentioned something about that the other day. And so I just want to say thank you for your patience. Thank you for not giving up. And also to Dr. Burling, who is just so wonderful what she does and made the time to come back and talk to us and explain to us really what was going on and answer any questions that we had. So I'm excited for this and I will support it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rosenetti. Is there any other discussion? Councilman Strong.
I just like to mention that obviously the process has been long, maybe slightly frustrating, but I do appreciate the diligence and the follow through from colleagues, relative of Mr. Burns, who's a TV star and an expert, But I respect him. I asked Councilman Burns before how that went. I heard that they did it and I asked him how it went, and I do respect his wisdom and council president for following through with the land bank. So the process took a while, but I think, these grants are a little different with some of the ones I deal with, but I think I don't think anybody looking from the outside would say anything other than we did everything we possibly could to honor that grant, to honor the intent of it. And at the end, it's not a slick project on the first ward, but it is a south side property that has been a eyesore. And even this last couple of weeks, Councilman Burns and I worked on a couple little things, little mini things together, and being on the south side and right on Park Ave. I'm looking forward to that proper further development of it and that neighborhood being improved because of it. So thank you for the process, and I'm look forward to supporting this.
Thank you, Councilman Strong. Any other discussion? See, my apologies. Just in my capacity as the first district representative, I just kind of want to echo the broader sentiment here. When a process like this goes on for this long, there are lots of things that can come into play. There are a lot of stakeholders that come into play. So I'm glad to see that we're at the point that we are. And, I just sitting in this chair, particularly when you're in a process like this, is even different than not sitting in this chair, just with the logistics of bringing things together, ensuring that your council colleagues' questions are answered and followed up with. And I think I've actually had just about one-on-one conversations, whether it's been by phone or email, with everybody sitting around at this table. So, it's great to I'm going to be honest, on a level of positivity, this kind of unanimity that's kind of forming here. And I'm going to quote Councilwoman Riley here, which doesn't always come up right from the front, right? And sometimes it takes a lot of different sources and information and time to get to that point, right? So, Councilman Burns, I want to thank you for representing your constituents on this. I know this, was difficult, and Councilman Strawn on the south side, working with him. I know Councilman Scanlon's put a lot in this. I incredibly agree with Councilwoman Rosinetti that, while I think she kind of hit the nail on the head. There's also an impact factor of those that are a part of this process but aren't codified in it yet, and how this back and forth can actually impact their perceptions. And Councilwoman Riley, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to look outside the box on this and looking at all the different angles. And I think a good way to kind of commence this is I'm in 100% agreement with you, regardless of whatever the substantive issue is, particularly as it relates to process. We can always do better. And as we move forward, let's have that discussion. I appreciate that. Any other discussion? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rosinetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman is absent, Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman.
As introductory ordinance 23-124 dealt with the sale of property, introductory ordinance 23-124 passes. We'll move on to first read legislation, the preferred agenda. Are there any councilmen or women who would like to remove any request for legislation at this time? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the preferred agenda. Madam Clerk.
First is introductory ordinance 23-129, considering finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Facility budget to increase professional services and repair for M-Seal repair.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory resolution 23-77, considered in finance. Resolution authorizing the mayor to accept an additional amount for Healthy Schools and Communities grant from the Broome County Health Department.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
And the last one on the preferred agenda is introductory resolution 23-78, considered in finance. A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with EDR for the Ross Park Carousel Shelter Condition Assessment and development of a new shelter design.
Discussion. Seeing none, Chair entertains a motion to accept the preferred agenda as submitted. Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Rezinetti. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rezinetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman is absent, Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All of the requests for legislation on the preferred agenda have passed. We will move forward with first read legislation on the non-preferred agenda. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Rezinetti for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-127.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion for introductory ordinance 23-127, an ordinance to declare the city of Binghamton qualified for exemptions from eminent domain procedure law, hearing requirements, and for the mayor to take necessary steps for the city to acquire properties for the Main Street Corridor Study and Safety Improvement Project, PIN 9754.37.
Do I have a second? Motioned by Councilwoman Rezinetti, seconded by Councilman Scanlon. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rezinetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Nay.
Councilmember Friedman is absent, Councilman Byrne,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
Right, that's 5 ayes, 1 nay, Riley, and 1 absent. Friedman.
Introductory ordinance 23-127 passes. It is worth noting on the record, introductory ordinance 23-128, due to the bond ordinance in relation to it, requires a minimum of 5 votes to pass. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-128, an ordinance to amend the bond ordinance adopted November 19, 2021, relating to the construction of various improvements to Marabito Stadium to comply with its mandates of Major League Baseball.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Rezinetti. Council discussion. Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a lot of money. And when we were discussing Henry Street and to use the ARPA money for Henry Street, I think it failed the first time and then was redone. But we got a letter from the owner of the baseball team. Well, I like him very much, by the way. And he said, he wanted us to pass it because he said that there's flooding and this is going to help the flooding of the stadium if we get Henry Street done. But passed. And then we get all this other stuff. We get more information about more flooding in there. Now, I'm not a flood expert, but when an area floods, it floods all, it's the area floods, it floods all the time. So, like last year, it didn't start flooding. Let's put it this way. If it floods, when Mayor David came to us for I think it was the $3 million to say that we had to get up to major league standards, and we got the scoreboard, and I did question the scoreboard, why we're getting a new one again. But there wasn't a water flooding issue at that time. I mean, if that area is a flood zone, then why weren't we talking about it then? But I didn't do due diligence on this. So, I mean, I love baseball. I was actually here. I was sitting right about over there in the center the night that city council approved the building of the stadium. I was here for political reasons. We wanted to get Councilman Libis. We knew he was going to vote no, and we used that against him in the election. But anyway, I was here the day that city council approved it. Anyway, I'd like to hold this over so I could do a little more due diligence.
Second,
A motion has been made by Councilman Burns, seconded by Councilwoman Riley to hold over introductory ordinance 23-128 by Charter 26. IO 23-128 is held over in that exercise. At this time, Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-130.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-130, an ordinance to amend the 2023 general fund budget to increase professional service expense and interest revenue.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resonetti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Presidente,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
aye.
Councilmember Friedman is absent. Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman.
Introductory ordinance 23-130 passes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory resolution 23-79.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory resolution 23-79. A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with various agencies for HUD fiscal year 49 service and capital programs.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti,
Aye.
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory resolution 23-79 passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory resolution 23-80.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory resolution 23-80. Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with CIS Architects or CJS Architects for the Water Street Parking Garage.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resonetti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Nay.
Councilmember Friedman is absent.
Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President.
Aye.
It's 5, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory resolution 23-80 passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory resolution 23-81.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory resolution 23-81. Resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with Marabato Gresham Insurance and Bond Agency to act as broker of record for the city's property and liability insurance.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Resonetti. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call a roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman is absent. Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Friedman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Introductory resolution 23-81 passes. This time we'll move to communications from councilmen, and Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. President. So briefly tonight, I commend Mayor Cram and his administration for being able to get Norfolk Southern to do anything. And here's why I say that, because in my capacity at work, I've tried to deal with the railroads. And it's nearly impossible to get a railroad to do anything. Anybody who's dealt with railroads has that same experience. So I think it's a great deal and they're reacting quick to it. I mean, it's going to make the city look better. And they are going to take the bottoms, because I thought about this for a long time. They're going to wrap the bottoms with like a aluminum or something to protect them from salt coming off the roads, which is the problem with them all the time. You can see where in the past the salt has risen up concrete beams where just ate away at them. So I commend it. It's gonna take a while, but I think they're supposed to start the from what I read, if I recall right, we'll start the first real soon here. So I commend the mayor for getting them to do anything, because it's not easy. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Resonetti.
Thank you very much. Yes, definitely. I echo what Councilman Scanlon just said. I think this is going to make such a difference in certainly how our city looks to folks when they're pulling in, and people just, driving under those underpasses for work, which have looked scary and of course unattractive. So that's exciting. I just wanted to add a couple more things. Monday, big parade downtown. It is next Monday, right? Yes, it is. Big parade downtown. Hopefully the weather will be good. I encourage everybody to go out and enjoy the festivities. And a couple other things regarding, both the month of October and awareness. Breast cancer awareness is this month. That's really important, for all of us to be aware and to support efforts to support those who are dealing with it. We probably know somebody who has been impacted. And to support any effort, anything that you can do to continue to create awareness and support those that are going through challenging times during this particular things. The other thing too is October is domestic violence awareness, and as many of you know, that is the area of where I received my clinical training and I feel very passionate about. So this month is just a month-long campaign to raise awareness about domestic violence and the impact that it has on individuals and families and communities. It is also a month for us to be thinking about and to honor and support the survivors of domestic violence, and to remember those that have actually lost their lives. Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior. It isn't just physical. It is one that includes emotional, financial, just all kinds of abuse that really it boils down to having from the perpetrator's perspective, having power and control. But awareness is not enough, and so I do challenge you to take action whenever we can to and I guess everything begins with us, right? To just educate the people that are around us, young men and women both, about what behavior is acceptable. Yeah, so just be mindful of that as the month unfolds, and participate in anything that you can to support those who have experienced domestic violence in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Resonetti. Chair recognizes Councilwoman.
Thank you, Council President. It's amazing. We always go back to back, and we typically we don't typically, but it's good that we once in a while have some of the same announcements. As a healthcare practitioner, it's important that we again highlight some of the topics Council Member Resonetti highlighted. Number one, I did want to bring up again breast cancer, because we do have a walk that will be happening in our area on October 15th. That walk is not just for visibility, but it's also to help raise funds to support research initiatives, as well as support some of the underfunded or underinsured populations that are not able to have the testing that's required to prevent and ensure if there is a glimmer a spot of cancer, that it does not metastasize. It's important, particularly for me, because there's a disproportionate impact upon Black women, because again, as the statistics have shown, we are typically diagnosed at a later rate, and then we have a lower survival rate overall. So it's important that we, again, unite to increase awareness, support initiatives to, again, provide access, equitable access to testing and additional support services for those that have been diagnosed with breast cancer. As my colleague also said, I know it happens so frequently that we know more than one person that has been impacted. I'm sure I lost a grandmother and my mother was impacted, so I have it on both sides of my family. So it is critical for me. She also mentioned domestic violence, which is why there will be a walk with pets in purple this Friday. Again, I don't have the specific in front of me, unfortunately, because I'm having some type of glitch, but it's important, as we also mentioned, not just to talk about domestic violence, but to report when we hear of such, try to minimize the rate and frequency of such, because it is something that not only impacts those that are directly affected, but it's cyclical. So the children and the neighbors, it continues, and it is very problematic. Again, so there is a domestic violence activity this Friday downtown. Please go to my Facebook page for the info. I can't pull it up right now. But again, as I close my announcements for today, well, no, I'm not closing. I'm like one of the preachers. This is my first closing. This is also October, which is Pharmacist Month. Have you hugged and thanked your pharmacist? It is, yes, thank you. But it's important to highlight because, again, they are the primary resource for flu shots, COVID shots, monkeypox. Any question you may have as you pop into CVS or any of the health systems that you may visit, we are extenders and provide direct patient care services. There's a great school locally creating future pharmacists. So again, celebrate your pharmacist. In celebration of Pharmacist Month, I want to highlight on October 11th, Prepped and Amped, a tour that's happening across the country, will highlight not only American Pharmacist Month, but the role of pharmacists in fighting the HIV and AIDS epidemic. It's important, again, that we highlight the access to a viable method to prevent transmission of HIV. So that is also on my social media, but I want to encourage any pharmacist, any student pharmacist, any member of the general public that would like to sign a pledge to encourage the prioritization of PrEP, which I hope everyone around here knows what PrEP is. If not, I'll add that to an email later. But PrEP is several medications, several different types of medications that will prevent transmission of HIV. It will prevent HIV transmission. But nevertheless, it's to sign a pledge to help promote and advance those initiatives. And finally, this is my real closing, although it's just the second one. I want to highlight, we talked about code a lot, and you all know that, again, you've heard the rumors, the 3rd District has a lot of code issues, and we get calls. I get emails every day, even about a squirrel. So, I mean, but so when I don't get a response, as Chris will tell you guys, I CC him on it. And I say, listen, the director, the head is on this email, and they are very responsive. They have even responded to some of the anonymous emails and threats that I've been getting about how I'm letting the neighborhood die because I don't respond as quickly, but they will send someone out. And believe it or not, sometimes the property owners prevent the code inspectors from doing what they need to do to actually cite and fine those owners. So I've learned a lot, which is why I'm always in his office, because again, the third district is very responsive, and they want to they need someone to advocate for them for a lot of the things we see, particularly since the zoning changed and some of the houses should not have individual rents per room. So I just want to give them a shout out, and we do want to stay engaged. So I hope whomever's in this seat after I leave on 123 will be as supportive of the residents and will push code to fulfill some of the promises he discussed tonight. Thank you.
The crime, the crime let me get it straight. The Crime Victims Assistance Center walk at 6 o'clock, start at the Lost Dog Cafe on Friday.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon, for bringing that up. That is the domestic violence event I was mentioning. I appreciate that support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rowley. And I would just like to note for the record that it was great to see a great illustration of the closest friendship of two city council members, Councilwoman Rowley and Councilman Scanlon. I just motivates. Chair recognizes Councilman Burns.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Councilman. The floor is yours.
I'd like to thank my favorite pharmacist in the world, there, for being here. Anyway, I just want to thank Dr. Burling, not to beat a dead horse on this on this Park Avenue, but I want to thank Dr. Burling and her staff and everybody, Mr. President, for dealing with the land bank, and the mayor for being right there to answer questions. And it was an example of government working, really, and it was a good experience. The ballpark that we held over, people talked about Rec Park, and I just want to make sure that, like Rec Park, we paved it and put the lines on it and then dug it up again. And if we had and Tom would know more than this about me, but if we had a second opinion going in, maybe we could have prevented something. So for this much money, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're getting every opinion possible on how to deal with the flooding, that we're not just taking one person's point of view of it and then have it be wrong. And that's about it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Burns. Chair recognizes Councilman Strong.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to mention anything. There's the more I think about it with Councilwoman Riley mentioning the pharmacist month. What is it, month? My wife does have some issues, and we have a great pharmacist, believe it or not, at Sam's Club, and she is an advocate for her as well when things aren't right or whatever. So now that I really think about it, is not that I haven't thought about it, but it is critical, and a good pharmacist does more than just fill those prescriptions. Sometimes they make sure that they're ready for you, or they didn't send in the prescription, that they call the doctor and fight on your behalf, and the insurance company, and there's a lot of things. So I think that's a excellent point. I just wanted to mention real quick, I referred to a couple minutes ago, just a couple small things, and I'd called Councilman Burns as I kind of walk around some of what will become the new parts of the 6th district. And we talked about code earlier, but I've had a couple correspondences this week, oddly enough, with the engineering department, and they have also been very helpful. Mr. Lake has gotten back to me very quickly on a couple issues on the new the Vestal Ave, which is going to be beautiful, by the way. And that whole area over there with the Vestal Ave curbs and milling and paving and the new walkway that goes along 434 and those exchanges as you come off 434 to enter Vestal Ave, it's, you know, it becomes a gateway street, obviously, into the city. And people don't use 434. So just want to give a shout out to the and the traffic department as well. A couple little things as I've been trying to help residents over there, a couple little minor issues. They've been very, very helpful. So I appreciate that. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilman Strawn. Just a few things, as Councilman Rowley alluded to earlier. I didn't get to check my email through the day because busy between meetings and work, but the proposed buyer, Ms. Farber, she actually did reach out to me. She sent me an email about 3:18 this afternoon, and I saw it when I got here a little bit before City Hall, before we started. So I just wanted to read into the record what she sent along. Binghamton City Council members, I am the interested party in the purchase of 92 Park Ave. Want to introduce myself and clarify who it is that has made an offer on the property. My name is Erica Farber. I was born and raised in the city of Binghamton. Graduated high school here in 1997, and in 1998 joined the Army and was away for 13 years. After coming back to Binghamton, I was given the opportunity to pursue my lifelong dream as a police officer for the city of Binghamton. I also currently serve in the National Guard. I'm planning on restoring the first for use of the property of a small local business. Thank you for your time and consideration, Erica Farr. So just wanted to share that with everybody as she had passed that. Definitely want to agree with Councilman Scanlon and Councilwoman Zanetti. You know, I can tell you I'm at the point. I am at the point where, as it relates to railroads and bridges, I believe I am in 2 mayors now, 2 different city council bodies, and believe it or not, 3 different congressional representatives. One who did, and one who currently actually sits on the House subcommittee on railway and transportation. These bridges have, Councilwoman Rezanetti probably said it best. It's literally, it's a fear factor. I couldn't agree with you more, whether it's, I can't even begin to tell you constituents who have reached out to me. Sometimes they're afraid to even go under the bridges. They'll take Clinton all the way down one end or the other, whether it's to, you know, past Glenwood going up, or all the way on the other way down to Front to go around it. I can tell you in the ward, we're full of them, whether it's Clinton in Front, whether it's Jarvis, which is technically in the 3rd district, whether it's Emma, whether it's Glenwood. But I had an opportunity to meet with Mayor Cram and with Congressman Mark Molinaro. And I know Mayor Cram also worked with Leader Schumer and Senator Gillibrand's office as well. And this is actually the first move. I think we've got almost 20 of these railway bridges across the entire city. So we actually got to get a close inspection up with the company. Obviously, the 1st district is full of them, but many of our respective districts are as well. And I'm really honored that the first come around on this is really going to be happening over the one on Glenwood. So there was kind of a general sense that this may not yield any fruit, and it did. And I was happy to support it. I was happy to see that my colleagues supported it. And I want to thank Mayor Cram for holding a sense of urgency with it. Really excited about 187 Clinton Street and the opportunity for some middle-class housing. I also want to thank everybody who is working in DPW and any of our respective third-party contractors. It looks like summer who forgot about us has come back and reminded us that it remembered where Binghamton, New York is located. And it's just great to see all of the additional weather time for work. While it crosses both of our districts, I would be incredibly remiss if I did not recognize Councilwoman Rezanetti. We have a major thoroughfare that crosses over the district that she represents and the district that I represent, coming up onto Main Street off Floral Ave, right, bordering as we're getting through and going through Binghamton and JC. And I just, for anyone watching, as well as for my constituents and your constituents as well, I know I'd been pushing for this, particularly in my last term, but I need to get on the record. Councilwoman Rosanetti, if it wasn't for you, that repave wouldn't be happening. Well done. And so thank you to DPW and everyone who is moving that along. And lastly, incredibly excited for our Binghamtonians and Americans with Italian heritage. We've got the Columbus Day parade coming up next month. So I really want to thank, we had an incredible opportunity to see all of our organizations, whether it's the Sons and Daughters of Italy, the Ladies Lodge here in Binghamton, Stella D'Argento, whether it was actually seeing Connie, who's going to be our Grand Marshal this year. We also have a great relationship with the Union Endicott School District. They actually came with about, I think it was 12 or 13 students today, 5 of whom are actually here in Broome County, not in the building here, sorry, in Broome County. They're actually from Italy. They're here on an exchange. So they're going to be here for a little while. And then some of the Union Endicott students are going to be going over to Italy for 2 weeks. So it was great to have them with us today. Really excited for the Binghamton Drum Band to kind of lead off the parade, band portion of the parade. That'll be a lot of fun, as they always traditionally do every year. And so also the first district also has a neighborhood watch meeting tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And then lastly, outside of first district comments, coming back to presidency role, forgive me, but at the expense of being direct, and I'll lean a little bit on Corp Counsel. I spoke with Corp Counsel just about 30 seconds ago, but as I was listening to everyone during comments, I suddenly looked, and from the perspective of an RL, we have a problem, which is that we approved introductory ordinance 23-127. And it's fine that we held over introductory ordinance 23-128. That's not problematic at all. What is problematic logistically is 128 is the funding mechanism in relation to 127. And if memory serves me correctly, Corp Counsel, if you can add to it, there were some related deadlines in relation to weather, as well as the MLB that was spoken about last time at the work session. So, Corp Counsel, I'll jump over to you really quick, and then I'll follow up with any colleagues if they have any questions or comments.
I do know that, I'm not certain about 1.7, but I do know that there are some deadlines coming up about getting this contract started, or the work started for Major League Baseball and the construction season, and the fact that it needs to be done in spring. So it needs to occur sooner rather than later. And ideally, by the end of the week.
Thank you, Mr. Corp Counsel. Anything from colleagues? Councilwoman Riley.
Please clarify, how are 127 and 128 linked? Is that was that an error you said? Right.
Oh, 127 was the
Right.
sidewalks. My apologies. Let me pull that back. Let me rephrase. 128 was held over. I think it was in relation to Councilman, the bond, and Councilman Burns, I think you had mentioned about the flooding issues that were going on over there as well, because, so my apologies, let me take that back. Councilwoman Riley, thank you for that correction. Not in relation to 127. What I meant to say, which I stated correctly, so I'll try this a second time. 128 is the funding mechanism in relation to the construction and the flooding issues around Marabito Stadium and the extensions of Henry Street. So thank you for that. So given that factor, I apologize. I thought that was codified in that RL and it obviously was not. And thank you, Madam Clerk, for that as well. So given that, because I'm a little concerned about this, particularly as it relates to the construction season and contractual issues in relation to the city, I'm going to call for a special meeting about this. So I want to get a sense from colleagues what they are thinking in relation to respective schedules. I could do that. Respectfully, Councilman Scanlon, I think given the sense of urgency that's needed for this, I think it might be better to codify something now in person. Thank you, Council.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Rezanetti, and then I'll come to Councilman Burns. Councilwoman Rezanetti.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. So the soonest would be Friday. That's the soonest. Doesn't mean it is happening that day. That's the whole purpose of this discussion. I get it. I get it. Absolutely. But yes, Councilwoman Rezanetti, you are right. The soonest would be Friday. We can do, just to point out, Columbus Day, Monday, obviously we're closed. Wednesday, the 11th, we actually are here because of budget. Tuesday, the 10th. Oh, Tuesday, the 10th potentially could work as well. Those are. Is that what works for everybody? We do have to be here at 5. So we would probably, if we went with Wednesday, we'd probably have to post it after the budget.
Mr. President,
Councilman Burns.
is it possible that we could set up a meeting, maybe with one from each party with an engineer, either our engineering office or an engineer that may be working on the project? Because, you know, the mayor was here with the owner of the ballpark, which there was a lot of information, but I would feel better speaking to the engineers themselves as they explain it. Then we'd have questions for the engineers, et cetera. But could we bring an engineer in? to the
No,
meeting?
we absolutely can. That's our right to do so if we feel it's appropriate. In and of itself, I don't have a problem with that. I'm assuming you're talking about prior to the special business
Yeah,
meeting.
prior to the vote or the special business meeting, and then have them there before we vote.
The only problem with that is that is not so. Our agendas for our respective meetings in terms of what goes on the bullets are actually codified in the city charter. So I'm not sure a speaker could necessarily be added, but in the same way as we did with 92 Park Ave, if there are a set of questions that you'd like me to relay to Ron Lake or reach out to the mayor or any questions that anybody might have, I don't mind facilitating that in the same way I did with the land bank. Don't get me wrong, Councilman, I'm
Right.
if we can figure out a way where we could do it in person and that person was here, don't get me wrong, I completely agree with you. I am preferential to that.
Right.
I'm not knocking what you're saying. We're just,
Well,
we're
we have
dealing
public comment. Maybe we could get a engineer to come in for public comment and just
well, so
break the,
I was actually just about to quite literally make that suggestion.
Right.
So technically speaking, what we could do is we could ask a city engineer to come down and speak for 5 minutes during public comment.
right, but then we sometimes break those rules and
Well, so
And-
hold
I
on,
could make a
hold on.
motion that night to say, go further, and let the person finish what they have to say. I mean,
So I think we should look at these things objectively more as teachable moments, right? Like,
Yes.
this evening was an example, right? So out of respect of communicating the flow, right? I didn't take away that time, but prior and afterward, there was no back and forth. So those times will happen and that's okay, but we also want to make sure we're following the rules and the exception doesn't become the standard.
Right.
So
but we can suspend the rules if we have a motion and vote on the suspension of the rules.
we could technically, if they spoke during public comment, which I have no problem with, the only thing they could speak because whatever they would say would actually be germane to the RL that's under consideration. So
Right.
they could do that, but it wouldn't be a conversation. I'd want to double check about. So keep in mind, as it relates to the suspension of the rules, that needs to be
What
pre-announced
about, what
prior.
about if we had a special work session meeting previous to the special meeting?
Again, if it is in relation to just considering that one, I don't have a problem with that. Let's review that as a function of time. That's fine as well.
Anybody?
Yeah, so that's correct, Councilman Strong. So the only issue that we have next week with Wednesday, 11 October, is that's not a normal meeting week for us. So that is a full, that's a full budget. Like we've got a full agenda that day, which again, in and of itself is fine. Do we maybe potentially want to look at a meeting for a work session, maybe Tuesday the 10th? And then the special business meeting maybe is 11 Wednesday, October. Again, I'm not against it. I'm just tossing ideas back and forth. That's literally it. I can tell you right now for myself, I have a meeting in the first district with constituents Tuesday the 10th. So I actually won't be here, and that starts at 6 p.m. and the class that I teach before that ends at 5:50. So I've got 10 minutes to get from BU to the parking lot to the First Ward Senior Center.
Can I make a motion to suspend the 5-minute rule for our coming business meeting and allow the engineering department to speak as long as they would like?
Respectfully, Councilman Burns, no, you cannot, because the 5-minute rule is codified in Chapter 26 of the city charter. That is a chamber rule that's codified in the charter. Yes,
So
Councilman.
let me
Scarpelli.
make a suggestion. I think part of what we should do in talking out loud, from what you said, President Scriggy, if anybody has questions, they should get them to the engineer like tomorrow or Friday. And then the engineer can come down with 5 minutes to answer those questions, or he can answer them ahead of time, where he has 5 minutes to clarify something you maybe didn't understand. That's a possibility too. I'm not sure what kind of questions are out there, but they can answer them ahead of time before we sit down and try to talk to them.
Court counsel.
I'm not certain that the engineer you want to speak to is our local engineer.
Right.
I believe they hired it out of town.
They did.
Right.
And I have a recollection that it's the engineer who specializes in drainage for baseball fields from Ohio.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we're going to
Maybe
arrange
we
for him
can
to.
set up a Zoom call before Wednesday.
Well, so maybe
Zoom is people, not as a.
maybe there is a different lens. Does everyone feel a need that the level of questions that they have necessitate a meeting with the outsourced engineer? How many people fall in that category? Because at the expense of being blunt, if it's one or two, which is fine, you can do that on your own with Zoom call, which I would be more than happy to assist in facilitating.
That's good.
So
But I would, it'd be great if somebody from each party was in on the meeting, but.
listen, I'm as long as it works with my schedule, and even if I'm there. So,
That sounds good.
all right, so we'll go on that end, but again, we have to go back to the special business meeting. So am I hearing availability wise, 11 Wednesday, October, because we're already here is what works? Because of the budget.
Yes, but I'm
Councilwoman Riley.
yes, I'm just concerned because we know when we go late, we're ready to go. And if we're going to deliberate at the end of the budget session, is everyone willing to do such? I mean, we know how, we've seen ourselves at the end of a long day.
I don't principally disagree with you, Councilwoman Resany. I think you're right. We obviously know, right? But I don't disagree. But again, it is part of the job, and I know you agree with that as well. And you know, for what it's worth, right? The agenda for that special business meeting would be, for all intents and purposes, public comment in relation to that one RL. A motion and a second, discussion, vote, close. So,
Because it is a contentious topic. I mean, it is a topic that may garner, we don't know,
sure,
right?
yeah,
I just want us to be mindful of such that. we
absolutely, yeah. There
stayed
could,
over.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman
No,
Riley,
no,
my
no, it's fine.
apologies, please
It's fine. No,
continue.
no, no. But I just want us to be mindful of such. If we could, I don't know if we can do a 4 o'clock. And if that's reasonable for our constituents, I just want us to, again, explore all options.
I'm with you, Councilwoman Riley. I definitely, I hesitate anything prior to 5 PM, close to bed, people working and stuff like that. I definitely agree with you on that one. Clerk
have-
Council.
2 comments. I believe you can do 4 o'clock, but those other issues are something that for you to consider. The other issue is on this Zoom call, if there is a call, 3 of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the other issue we need to remember, which is if there are 4 or more of us, that would constitute a
Right.
quorum, which under opens meetings law. So Councilwoman Riley, we'd have to follow essentially the same way we did with the code discussions, right? You, Councilwoman Friedman, and myself were there, right? Because if there was one more, as we talked about, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, maybe it's the 3 of us. I'm willing to cede if there's someone else who would like, Councilwoman Resident. Oh, I apologize. I thought you had your hand raised earlier. That was my fault. I apologize, Councilwoman. See? I'm with you.
This is what happens to me. You go too late.
Ah,
For. Yeah. Yeah. So just from a time perspective, so just as an update, next Wednesday, we actually only have finance and IT. So we actually won't go to, so, you know, but again, I mean, if we needed it to, I know we would all stay if we needed. That's not an issue. So, all right. So I'm going to put on the record right now, I am calling for a special business meeting concerning introductory ordinance 23-128 for the Binghamton City Council to occur Wednesday, 11 October 2023, immediately after the budget meeting is over. Madam Clerk, could you please move that forward with a communication to the press at your earliest opportunity? Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, so we are on board. We got that. Motion to adjourn.
Move.
Motion by Councilwoman Riley, seconded by Councilman Scanlon, my favorite pair. We are adjourned.